Hi, all. My name is Steve Taylor, and I am on the executive board of the VPA. And I also, you may probably know me more from my participation as a chair of the Richmond District for the last couple of years. And I'm helping with the legislative effort this year, along with a great team of guys. Jake Pulliam, who you probably know, Tom Belgrey, and David Hobbs, and probably I think you all know Seth also. And Mike will probably be joining us, Mike Ivey, our president. We want to thank Celia Marshall, who is helping us set up everything for tonight. And she's kind of running the show in the background there. And what we'd like to do for the first time is to bring together some folks who are interested in one of the primary missions of the VPA, that is to encourage the state to develop and maintain an increasingly enhanced film incentive program. And what we thought we might do is try to get an early jump on things with some advice from Josh here, who has been our longtime lobbyist, to consider some things during this challenging economic time, the World Health situation, and the fact that the General Assembly will be coming into session in the next couple of weeks on some matters. And we thought what we might do is have Josh speak with some of us tonight about what the program currently is, its current state, what the VPA has been able to accomplish with him in the past, and give some basic history of these things, and then discuss where we might go from here and trying to influence some of our elected officials to go for a more enhanced and robust Virginia presence in this industry that is growing, changing, and developing content of all sorts, from what was initially filmed to VR, and we'll see where we go from here. Just by way of introduction, Josh has been affiliated with Matt Benedetti and Associates, LLC. It's a lobbying and public communications firm that runs and his role there is a number of fields that he works in, including economic development, utilities regulation, education, telecommunications. He's worked on Capitol Square in the past for former Delegate Morgan Griffith, who went on to Congress. And with that, why don't we start with a little bit from Josh, and then we'll move to a period of discussion, and then we'll open it up to some questions or chat from our participants here. If you have some things that you want to bring up and feel that's important, we would love to have all of your all's participation as we go along in this challenging environment to build the film industry in Virginia. With that, hey, Joshua, thank you.
Great. Thanks for having me, inviting me to do this. I always find these to be very helpful, not just for members and organizations, but for me, so I can kind of get more in depth, a little more intel, a little more, what are you thinking? What do you see? And it helps me and the legislative team on the Hill to advance the things we go for from session to session. So as I'll give you a little bit of background, okay, I'm going to share my screen. I put together a few slides to kind of kick things off. It's about 78 slides broken down. I'm kidding. Let me do this. Sure. So, slideshow. There we go. So I've been the lobbyist for the VPA for a good while now. Is that blocking that?
There may be some, Celia, you might see some of us on the side there.
Oh, I got it, okay.
I don't know if you can help us out.
Yeah, I think I got it okay now. So, a little bit of background about myself. I did work for a legislator way back when. After college, I was also a local party chair for I make no bones about it, I did work for a Republican legislator. I was a local Republican Party chair. That was a long time ago, and a lot has changed in politics. But after running his office for about 3 years, I moved to Richmond, started my lobbying work, just a whole array of different areas and industries I've been able to advocate for. The film industry, though, has been the longest one that I've had the pleasure of advocating and learning. It really helps having that year-to-year, experience to be able to, tell legislators what we've been able to do with what they give us, how we advance that, and how we can use that to leverage to get incentives increased. So let's see. So just a couple of topics I'll go over: the types of incentives, how we've grown them, and then how we, advance that and strategies to keep growing it. So we've got four main incentives here. Let's do this. Here we go. So we've got the Governor's Motion Picture Opportunity Fund. That's discretionary. That's funded and generally through the budget. So that's something that it is dependent on each year and really biennium of the budget. So it's really one of the biggest moving targets that we've had, because some years it could be, a couple of million. Some years it can be not. It can be 6 million. Some years when I started doing this for the VPA, we were at 200,000 a year in the Governor's Motion Picture Opportunity Fund. So nothing else that you see on the list had really was there and was being utilized. The next thing that we put in place after a few years was the Major Motion Picture Production Tax Credit. That's more for kind of the more bigger budget films that come in. And I think, as Andy Edmonds has said, they come in, they're a helicopter of money, and then they're right back out. That's great for some of the numbers, but it's really, we leverage that in conjunction with the Opportunity Fund to really help the resident industry to be able to do the smaller productions, the more independent, and then bring in what we need for the bigger ones. There's a lodging tax exemption for things that come through. That's not film-centric. That's for any long-term stays for in the industry. There's sales and use tax exemption that you can apply for with the tax department. Let's see. So some of the other things that we have the benefit of, where we don't have to be the biggest ones with the biggest pot of money of any of the states with incentives to land the good, the sustainable work, whether it be something bigger or if it's the more series type of productions like we've seen with Turn and some of the other one-offs that we've done, the Walking Dead series, and Homeland was another one. The locations everywhere from the beaches, inner cities, mountains, all over. The access to state buildings and different warehouses, the Capitol, Colonial Williamsburg. You're just not going to get that in the other states. And we use that to leverage that we don't have to bring that same amount of money that Massachusetts or Georgia, or any of the others bring to the table, because we can utilize what we have here. The film office does great in that. I cannot be more complimentary of how we work with them, with that partnership to get so many of the good things here. Some of the other things that we have, the historical backlot out in the out at the State Farm in Goochland. State Farm's the state prison. There's a huge historical backlot out there that started with John Adams then turn, and it's just been built on since. We own the state owns an Oval Office set that they've kept since the filming. I forget which one it was, but it's about 10 years old that they were going to leave it behind. So the state came in, grabbed it, and they've utilized that to a lot of success. This kind of graph shows you how we've grown from the year 2008, where we had started with, $200,000 a year in the Motion Picture Opportunity Fund, and how we've grown starting in 2011 and then on with big increases 2014, 17. This particular graph cuts off at that point because the data for this, essentially, it's not quite back yet with some of the other things that have filmed, because they have up to 5 years to do the audit, claim it. So that's why it cuts off there. To show this another way with the different governors' administrations, these numbers are through biennium numbers. So what you see, 400,000 under Kane. McDonald was very good. He bumped that up over the time. That was when we instituted the tax credit, got it on the books. That grew under McAuliffe. The tax credit was expanded even further to $6.5 million a year, or the 13 a biennium. On the last one here under Northam, that 13 million is in red with an asterisk, because that's what was introduced by the governor this past December. That was a surprise. We knew it was probably going to be an increase. We were surprised it was by that much. It was not COVID that reduced that. COVID had not hit yet. So this particular session, once things got going, governor introduces his budget, the House and Senate start taking their swipes at it. It was the first time, I'm sure as everyone has seen in the news in the last 6 months, first time that Virginia's had the trifecta of the House, Senate, and the governor lined up under the Democrat Party since, I think, 94, 93 maybe. So when that all lined up, when the budget came out under the House and Senate versions at the end of session, before COVID hit, they had taken that 13 million down to where it was before, 3 million a year. So there was, there was a million of that 13 left in there after the cuts. So we came out of session 4 million a year in GIMP-off, tax credits still stayed the same. But then COVID hit, and well, everything is off the table or on the table when they come back next month. That extra 1 million was taken out. So if in a worst case scenario, if nothing changed, we would be held whole at what we currently have, which is 3 million a year in GIMP-off, Governor's Post-Picture Opportunity Fund, and then the 13 million a biennium in tax credits. We may be able to recoup some of that. This coming special session, it's just going to depend on what is the shiny objects coming this session. So some of our legislative leaders in the past, I didn't want to go through names and do all that, but it just kind of shows you the assortment of our partners in the General Assembly over the years. Louise Lucas, Portsmouth, President Pro Tem of the Senate, Terry Kilgore and the other, Gates City, former chair of the Congress and Labor Committee in the House. Below Louise is Emmett Hanger, Republican, who's chair of the Finance Committee in the Senate up until the switch. So it really is a bipartisan support that we receive. Now, these are our leaders. We do face opponents. For example, this is an actual picture on the House floor several years ago when one of our bills was up to expand the tax credits. This is Scott Sorovell, who is not a fan of, as he says, giving money to Hollywood. As you can see, besides the Fair of the Boa, the pimp cane, the hat, the shades, you see the sticker. It says Virginians for tax credits. That normally would not be helpful to our cause, but because of the spectacle he made of himself at this, it actually got us votes and worked out in our favor. But that's kind of the worst case of, when our bills that should be about economic development, jobs, Virginians working, good jobs, the folks coming out of the colleges, it can get sidetracked with some, I guess, stunts like this. So while it's not helpful at the time, it is something we have to navigate. Now, he went on to the Senate. He is a rising member in the Northern Virginia Democrat Caucus. He has put away the boa and the hat, thankfully, but he's still not a fan. Some of the other ways we help, I guess, raise our profile with legislators and decision makers, not just legislators, but the staff of the money committees is very influential. The governor's staff with the policy shop, what we do, and we work with Andy and some of the studios when they are here. We'll do the set tours. We'll bring in certain executives from different studios when they come in. We'll strategically work to set up some high-level meetings. We'll take them on the tours of the back lot, that historical back lot out in Goochland, the State Farm. The star power, we will bring in, the Sissy Spacek, Adriana Trigani, Big Stone Gap, Mike Henry, Family Guy, and the Cleveland Show. We will work them in strategically for certain meetings. It's always kind of a little hit and miss when you bring in talent. What I found is they'll sometimes like to push their own agenda, which is not always helpful to our cause. But it has worked out pretty well for us over the years. We will partner with different groups that have similar agendas and end goals. The Hospitality Travel Tourism Association, the state and local different commerce chambers, different firms. We work very closely over the years with Troutman Sanders. They represent Turn and AMC. AMC also with the Walking Dead series that was here last spring. Work with them very well. Transparency and the accountability. We try to be very open up front with the decision makers and the legislators of, here's, with the dollars you give us, here's how we utilize that and benefit the Commonwealth. We are always open. Every dollar that the state allots has to be accounted for on the front side before anything goes to a studio, because we don't want it to look like we are, quote, subsidizing Hollywood. As Andy would say, well, it's not Hollywood, it's Holly Smith, who lives in Louisa, runs a catering shop, and a job is a good $50,000 to her. With that, I always like to make a plea, and we can go into this a little bit later, but meeting with your legislators now, before January, before December, to talk about why it's important, how this is your job. Invite them out to your studios, your backlot, your whatever, if it's a catering event. Let them see how this benefits you, their constituents. And, forging those relationships with, not just the legislators and their aides, but other local elected officials, if you can, because today's mayor is tomorrow's congressman. With that, I've probably gone on way too long and can answer any questions. We can open it up from there. And let's see, let's go back, see if I can figure this out now. Stop share. Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Hey, thank you so much for that. There's just some preliminary questions. In light of the pandemic, many folks, and of course the situation in Richmond where we have had some civil unrest, and then I think we're still in our second state of emergency here. So it's access to the Capitol. Capitol Square is very limited. Meeting legislators. How would you suggest folks work around that in light of what's going on?
Well, clearly with what's going on, both COVID and civil unrest throughout the state in Richmond, the legislators will be coming to town on the 18th for the special session to deal with the budget. They will also be dealing with issues around use of force, police reform, public safety, those issues. So the budget will get, it will be coincided with that. Write, email, call, they are very, very responsive when it comes to that. Forge those relationships. Shoot the email. They are very good, having worked for a legislator myself. It'd been a while, but there was still email and cell phones even back then. They are very responsive when it comes to constituents. So, and I meant to include a link. We can send it out a little bit later after this of, who my legislator is. You put in your address. I always like to tell, folks, especially our organization, find out who your representative, state, and your delegate and senator are, not just for your residents, but for your business. If you have a business, a studio, whatever it is, contact them both, because that's a business constituent, and that matters just as much as the voter. So, and that helps with the, I don't want to say double dip, but that way you can get more exposure, help, saturate the market of, getting to the legislators. So email, calling, always helpful when you do. You cannot say enough, I am a constituent. I live on Elmore Street, and they will get back to you. It is vitally crucial. As I said, I used to represent a group that was the Virginia Voter Registrars Association, so all your general registrars on Election Day. And it fascinated me getting them to reach out to their legislator. They were always a little hesitant, and I would have to explain to them, your group, you are viewed by them as what stands between them and their name on the ballot, whether that's true or not. So everyone carries a tremendous amount of weight when in numbers and if you're in the district. And in fairness, because they get so inundated with communications and email, if you don't say up front you are in the district, it's probably not going to get a response. So it's vitally important. Because I worked for the majority leader, we got a lot. 15 years ago, we would get 900 emails a day or overnight. And if it wasn't in the district, it had to be put to the side because you just can't respond to everything. So, I cannot hammer that home enough.
But I think your point's well taken about being a business constituent. And I think given the nature of this business where some of you are doing sets, and of course you have friends, family, associates, both business and relational, that are kind of spread out. So your business connections might be a little bit larger than some folks, because if you're working a set in one area, you're now a business constituent, or you're hiring a company that might be caterer or something from another district, that might gives us, I do business in this area, hiring these types of folks. And I just wanted to let you know of some of my concerns.
Yeah, that would be, there are two examples that really paid dividends, I think, that where it was not we or I or us that took legislators out to a set. I mean, what amazed me is I could tell them, hey, look at the money that's spent. Let's see this. But we had the former chair of appropriations go on set when they were filming up at VMI Field of Lost Shoes. One of the producers was a VMI grad, was also a legislator at the time, Peter Farrell. He, not with me, he invited the chair of the Appropriations Committee to come to the set, see everything. And it wasn't until he got, was walking around and he went up to the caterer and said, so where do you come in from? Are you from New York or Georgia or whatever? He said, no, I'm in Louisa. This is a big contract for me. This will be, and it really made him realize, oh, okay, that is local. And that was a very staunch Republican. Again, it's not one way or the other. This is a very bipartisan issue that we find. Another one was the Speaker's office in Richmond. They were filming JFK, or the killing Kennedy, and they were going through the Speaker's office, was doing some set design, and somebody said, oh, you're going to go out and get those vases and stuff from a truck you pulled in from Hollywood or whatever. And said, no, I'm going to go down to my antique shop down the street that I run and get the stuff. And the Speaker's office was telling me that story, and I wanted to pull my hair out. I was like, I told you so. But it's the trust but verify. So when they see it firsthand, that helps so much.
Yeah. Now, how would you suggest for folks who might not be in the VPA? I mean, the industry is, of course, always broader than the group. But the group of us are the folks who are most incentivized, most active. Any suggestions on nudging our friends who might be outside the organization but in the business?
Yeah, shame them. Do whatever you have to get them to join. I would, it's what I have found with organizations is the results of what we've been able to do over the years, because I have been doing this for so long with this group, is showing how we've gone from $400,000 a biennium to we're over $20 million a biennium now in incentives. And to me, that just is mind-blowing to me how we've been able to achieve that growth. And it's not done overnight, and it's a little bit at a time. It's not always the lobbyists doing it. It's not always the party in power, but it is strategic building with leaders and elected officials that trust, the reputation, the membership, across the state. And, like you were saying, Steve, the having the business address, we always kind of get hit with this nomadic type of industry that they just come in and out. And so one of the things that we work on heavy is with the college students that are coming out, the state invests so much money into these programs at the state universities and colleges, the film programs, VCU, JMU, Virginia Tech, Radford. They, why would they invest in these kids coming out and then not have a industry for them to go to work in? Why would we educate them at the state expense and then they have to go to Louisiana or Georgia or wherever for the work? Yeah. So that's helpful too.
All right. Now, further out, that Brenda forwards a question here in chat where she, the VPA maintains a listserv and contact list that's much larger than the organization. And she asked, should we considering some type of campaign marketing to aimed at the folks who are on that listserv but aren't necessarily members?
Absolutely. It is only going to help grow membership if people that aren't members see the value. So if they keep getting, I would not think of it as proprietary if you're sending info out to the listserv, the members, whether members or just people who have to be on the listserv, and blast them, and they'll start seeing the growth. They'll start seeing the value, and that's how I think the membership can grow with the VTA, is the value and what we've been able to accomplish over time. I have found people do not want to be part of an organization unless they can find out more of what's it going to do for me. What do you all do? So I think, the blasting out the listserv, marching orders to contact, and here's what we've been able to do in the past over time.
Okay.
I think that's helpful.
Additionally, you mentioned, and I know this is election season, and these seasons,
every year in Virginia is.
Yes, yeah, we are lucky or unlucky in that way, and but it does seem to me that although the legislature isn't up for re-election this year, and part of it will be next year along with the governor, but many of those members are out campaigning, so that if some of you are running into them in those spaces, you might chat with them about this, even though they're there for congressmen or congressional candidates, so-and-so, or for one party's presidential candidate or another. There might be an opportunity to say, hey, I'm so-and-so. And but of course, the gathering is for another purpose, but thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it is critical. I think it is beneficial, and I think it is appropriate because, we're in a unique election season because of COVID, but we're also in a unique election season because of what's at stake and who's in current office right now. There's a lot of momentum. There's a lot of passion with this election. So even though it's a senatorial election, it's a presidential election, and congressional election, all federal stuff, the surrogates will be out there and people will be engaged. Thank you. People will be engaged with, people will be engaged with the campaigns. So you're going to have the legislators, the delegates, the senators, the mayors, the legislative aides, the party activists out there campaigning. It's going to look different, and they're navigating that. But after Election Day, after Labor Day, when things really take off, I think they're going to figure out how to press the flesh, shake hands, kiss babies, etc. Maybe not kiss the babies, but so yeah, it's okay to approach them there, even though they're not up for election this year. It's even more important because they're not up for election this year. They have more of a bandwidth not being on the ballot this November to sit, talk, and it's, that's when you're going to get a lot of their time.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. Having worked with a number of candidates and office holders, that you get around fall of election year, end of summer, it's all about the election.
Well, and to close the loop real quick, trying to forge a relationship with your legislator during January and February is hard, and it's not because of any other reason, but it's session and there are 1,000 things and bills going on all at the same time. Being able to build that relationship in the summer, the fall, so that you've seeded it, it's taken roots, so that when the votes come during the session, when we have bills up, budget amendments going, we can send out an alert, and Holly Smith can call up that legislator and say, "Hey, remember me? Vote yes on this."
Okay. Now, going back to one other point, you touched on Democrat, Republican, or regional differences. Any thoughts on approaching, as a general rule? We know things might change specifically. Approaching Democrats versus Republicans, approaching regional folks, whether they're in the Shenandoah area, Northern Virginia, Central, or Tidewater, Hampton Roads, or Southside. Any thoughts on that?
It's because our issues are all over the state, because they'll film in Big Stone Gap or Hampton Roads, Northern Virginia, Richmond, and because we have not really had a problem with one party or the other. We've had issues with particular individuals that dress up and make a fool of themselves on the floor, like that one. And he knows that I use that picture, and he gets a kick out of it. I wouldn't say, stay away from one or the other, but if you know somebody is not going to be favorable, or it's just going to set them up and set them off to be an enemy, if you know that going in, maybe put that one on the back burner and leave that one alone.
Okay.
But
Are there other folks like the senator that you think are more or less or in the same milieu of thinking?
No, and I use him as the extreme. One thing we did see a little bit this year was, with the House having been in Republican control for the last 20 years, there were only two Democrat lawmakers who had been around in the House the last time they were in power. So there was a surge this year in the House of, I guess, education that had to be done. Thankfully, we did have relationships with all of them. It was good, but there was a bit of a learning curve. So if anything, and I don't think it was negative, if anything, I think, it only helps to reach out and over-educate legislators, whether it's Republican or Democrat.
Okay. Now, the administration of the government, or opposite that, the localities or other folks who might be in office, any thoughts on approaches to people that you might know or have connections to who are in the governor's administration or in some of the local offices that might be influential?
Absolutely. If you have relationships with, sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, if any of the members have relationships with members of the administration, be it, it doesn't have to be at secretary level. It can be, a policy aide or whatever. It can only help to reach out to them. On the local level, we work very closely with a lot of different larger jurisdictions, have representatives or lobbyists at the General Assembly representing them. We've utilized that very well over the years, but having people from their back home even reach out to the local mayors, board of supervisors, because today's mayor is tomorrow's senator, and so it can't hurt to start too early to educate folks. And it can only help. I always get a hoot how we'll sit down and talk to a legislator, and it happens every year. It happened this year with the committee chair, and he was a little against us, kind of, not really buying it yet. And come to find out, his son had graduated film school at William & Mary, and his son was still on the payroll of dad and hadn't gotten a job yet. That's why he was not quite so favorable. But it's that, educating of, okay, here's how this all works. Just because your son has not found its success, here's, what we really are, what we're doing, and how it benefits the state as a whole.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Yeah. Thank you so much on that. Now, we do have a comment that some of the information we want that you've presented, and we have talked a little bit about this, about creating sort of working documents that are all available to VPA members via web and things like that, or folks exploring the site. But we did have a point made about that, and of course what we've been able to accomplish over the years, so that maybe it's an inducement to folks to help jump in, roll up their sleeves. We are getting towards around 7:15, and I wanted to make sure if there are some folks who are online with us who might have some questions, that you make sure that are there some folks who might want to jump in there?
Just so I don't forget, and just real quick, as far as when I tell folks, reach out to the legislators, talk to people, all of that, let me know. Bring the feedback to the organization. Let Steve know. Let the folks know, so that we can check off, at least in our mind, okay, these folks have been touched, these legislators, if there is feedback, so that we know that going in to the next session, or going into certain meetings, or when we make certain asks, that can only be helpful. I'm not ashamed to put my phone number, email, cell, whatever out there. I'd rather be bombarded with info than not have the info I needed. So if that helps at all.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
You might have hit that. Yeah, you might have hit this before I got here, but is there a schedule of town halls, either virtual or in person, that we can reference in order to meet these legislators? And then the other side of that is, can we schedule VPA events with each of these legislators to address the VPA from their perspective?
No and yes. So in order, there's not a master, and it would be very helpful if there was a master list of town halls and speaking engagements that every legislator had going. They each put that out, but it's not compiled. So my best suggestion on that is follow your legislator and candidates, because they might get beat next year, on Facebook, Twitter, social media, and subscribe to their newsletters. You may feel like it's junk, and a lot of it is maybe just posturing, but that will give the members in the different districts where their legislator is going to be, their town halls. A lot of them do town halls. A lot of them are having to do virtual town halls, Zoom, whatever. So there are ways to engage that. As far as the VPA membership, absolutely, legislators would be very interested in getting in front of us. Next year is a statewide cycle for Virginia, so all 100 members of the House will be up, but so will the elections for governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. There are a lot of people wanting to run for statewide office, so we'll be able to get some of those candidates. If we're still in the COVID world, we'll have to do some virtual stuff. But if we're not, they would very much be interested in talking to different chapters or the group if we do events. The ones it seems we do the state of the industry in January, February every year. That's hard to get legislators to come to, just because you don't know what the day is going to be like during session. they start at 7 a.m. They don't know if they'll be done off the floor and done with committees at 8 p.m. or 11 p.m. or 5 p.m. So that's the only kind of nuance. It's kind of hard to nail someone down during session for an event that is off campus.
Okay.
We have another question has popped up from Ms. Delora Lambert. Is the current proposal being sent to the legislature with a model of what we'd like to see in tax credit over a period of time? And we might need some follow-up or clarification on that.
So what the way we're going into the special session, they don't, the Virginia General Assembly is 2 months a year because they're part-time. It feels like a full-time job, even though they're not full-time. So they were only in session January, February. The budget is only up every 2 years. They'll tweak it every other year. Since they were coming back in August, the 18th, to deal with the budget, because a lot of things got taken out because of COVID, a lot of money was moving around, a lot of new discretionary spend that was allotted was moving around. So there's not necessarily a proposal of what we are asking for or what we would like to see. That it gets a little in the nuance for a special session, because in this particular one, I think we're really going to be working hard to keep what we have. If we can grow it a little bit, that's great. So that's what we'll be focused on. Outside of this coming, August special session, working over the next several months with the membership of what we want to see as our agenda for this coming session in January, February. That's when we'll really be able to kind of put some stuff together, an agenda, and work with our legislators of what we would like to see.
Following up on that, considering we might want to explain to folks the nature of Virginia's sort of biennial budgets. Most governmental entities have biennial budgets, but most people are thinking by year. So when we talk, if you could help educate us all on that.
So Virginia is on the 2-year budget cycle. So our budget cycle ends every June 30th for the 2 years. So they'll put a budget in place. It's a 2-year budget, but because they come back, they have what I guess I would call it the true up. So then, in the midpoint of that 2 years, the off session. So this coming session will be an off session where it's only a 45-day session. And that's because the budget in theory is already baked pretty good. They've just got to do some true up depending on revenue collections and different things on expected spending. And then the legislation that gets dealt with is, if it has an effect on the budget, that has to be accounted for. If it's expanding tax credits, that needs to be accounted for on the front side. I've argued that it doesn't, but I don't like the budget and they do. So, but we do need to think about those things. Even though it's a 2-year budget, it does get broken down and there are opportunities to work on it through the line. And we can do things like a delayed enactment, but that's getting into some nuances. So every year we do have the opportunity to expand. I will say there are years when I always tell the membership we are strategic when it comes to our ask. We never want to come across as greedy or asking too much. We always want to be grateful. There are, from time to time, years after we've gotten a big increase on something where we have made the strategic decision to not pursue something that session. And it's more of a thank you and protect. And we appreciate this. We'll come back next year, show you what we've done, how we've used it, and how it's benefiting the industry. But that gets a little more, I guess, into the nuances. So did that help at all?
Does that help for folks understanding some of these things?
Yes, thank you. Sorry about the background noise.
Oh, not a problem.
Okay. Any others questions that we might have back with some of the folks who've joined us? Now, one follow-up, I see Mr. O'Farrell on, and I did want to ask, and this may have touched on this just a little bit earlier with friends and other relationships, but of course, IATSE and some other organizations related to film, SAG, and sister organizations that would like to see further growth in the industry. Recommendations on working together in that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can jump. Of course, we should be working together. We've always tried to work with you. I always have to do it kind of at arm's length because I am the Northern Yankee carpetbagger as far as a lot of them are concerned in the legislature. But, you know, we always do what we can to motivate our membership to contact their legislators. Things are going to be a little tougher this year. There aren't going to be as many of the opportunities for the meet and greets, and set visits are out for the foreseeable future. I can tell you, you know, Swagger is trying to come back this fall. Walking Dead is looking to shoot right after the first of the year. There's another project looking to come in. So we're going to have work we can point to. We're just not going to have work we can take them to. And with the new protocols that are going to be in place, it's going to make things difficult from that aspect. But certainly we'll always support the VPA. We'll always have our members come out. I think we're up to about 378 members in Virginia now. I've been taking part in the Northern Virginia AFL-CIO. They've put together a entertainment kind of department, if you will, within that we've been meeting and talking with people about, because this affects the entire industry across the board, not just for film and television, but theater, live music. So we're working closely with the locals in the Virginia Beach area, DC's area that goes into Northern Virginia. So, you know, certainly when the call comes out to contact people, our folks know the importance of it. They know how, you know, what to say. We talk about what it means to us to be in the industry locally and to be able to work at home, because so many of them do have to travel. You know, right now, the president of the Georgia local is a former Virginian who still owns property in Virginia. Some of you who've been around for a while know Ray Brown. You know, Ray's been in the industry for about 20 years, and so, or longer. But now he's the president of that local, and there's quite a few people that moved down there, you know, from the area, and we don't want to see that happen. We want to create those jobs like you're talking about for the students coming out. We're looking to work closer with a number of the schools. I know the state's talking to the community college out by Powhatan, because, you know, they've taken over that juvenile facility out there as well for production. So there's some real opportunities there in the future. And that's the story that I know Andy's carrying, that Josh is carrying, you know, that people need to take to these legislators, that it, you know, it's not Hollywood.
Okay. Yeah.
And, you know, on that, we don't have to match dollar for dollar what other states are offering, because we have so many of the other benefits, like the state capitol or certain facilities, military access to certain things. we just have to be enough in the game. We don't have to match it dollar for dollar. And we always show a good return on investment for the state.
Okay. Tom Belgrey is also on, and he's active in SAG along with being in the VPA. I wanted to see if he might have some thoughts there. Tom, can you hear us? Tom, I see him on there.
Looks like he's mute.
Okay. Oh, all right. Tom, you might have to unmute yourself. Okay. Maybe. All right. We'll move along. And if he jumps back on there, we can. Any other thoughts or questions as we approach the bewitching hour here?
Anyone else? Or
okay.
I do 2 shows on Sundays. Tip your waitress. I can, keep talking for ever and ever.
Well, we promised about an hour, and we've arrived at about that. And so I do want to thank you,
Steve. Sorry, my computer died just the moment you started talking about me. I was listening to everything that was being said, going, "Oh yeah. And believe me, I certainly don't want to be." This is Tom Belgrey, by the way. I don't want to be the guy traveling Atlanta and Boston and New York, which are 3 of the places I worked last year when I was working, when all of us were working. I want to work at home. That's why I'm a member of the VPA. We've got so much here in Virginia. Atlanta has one thing and one thing. It's an open checkbook. If you've got a production, they're going to give you the tax credits and whatever the hell you want. We don't have that. We've got so much more. And I'm on the board of the Screen Actors Guild, and we really want to, keep production here. I'm in the Mid-Atlantic board. We couldn't have gotten involved at a worse time than this. So we really have to be creative in getting our heads together and how we deal with the current crisis and how we can, funnel stuff to us. My son's screaming in the background now that I've got a good connection.
It's okay.
So I think the most important thing for us is to get a cohesive idea of, we know we're going to get limited funds. We know they're not going to be jumping to throw money at us. They never have been. But at this time, we have to be creative in how we approach the legislators and what our game is.
Okay. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for that.
If I could, just from my perspective, and I think this goes back to something that was said earlier, going into this special session, we're just trying to hold position. That's because we're an easy target. And if you get too high profile, somebody could go, hey, here's money we can cut. I mean, we're looking at the same problems in Maryland as well, because we're going into a year with diminished revenue for the states, and they're going to be looking for money. They're going to be looking for ways to raise revenue. And, we can point to that. But I think with this special session, and correct me if I'm wrong, for now we want to hold, and we'll see where we are first of the year going into the new session to see where we can make improvements. Yeah, Virginia, look, you got multiple things going for you. Those locations and having the State Farm and the Powhatan Juvenile Facility and the use of so many places in the state is one. You've also got something in Andy Edmonds is the best film director in the country, and he's the best at finding change in the couch cushions when he needs to. Nobody is better. I've interacted with him from all over the country. You've got one of the best. So, that's going to be the selling point. There are 3 solid projects that want to take place before we get into the next real session, or at least during. Yeah. And that's not counting their smaller independents that want to get some things done as well. So I think, like I said, what I'm taking from this is this session, we want to be even special session, thank them for their support. thank them for being there for us. And then, that gives us a little bit of time to regroup and really look at, okay, what's the next session going to look like? Is there room for improvement there?
Thank you.
I absolutely agree. And even if, as weird as this may sound, even if you can just get off a quick email to your legislator or anything about, hey, I'm in this industry, want to set up a meeting with you down the road. I know you're busy, special session. Even that in the back of their head as they're working through this special session, the budget, is, that starts planting the seed for them to start protecting their constituent or industry so that they will, when they're in the room where it happens, pun intended, that it can be, they'll trigger and go, okay, wait a minute, guys, we can't do this, or, I've got constituents. It makes a difference, even if it's just in the back of their mind.
Yeah. Did I see Joanna pop up with a question?
That's actually me. That's my daughter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had to go on a different connection to get back on. I was sitting there listening on my connection and I wasn't able to connect, and so I dumped onto my daughter's.
Okay. All right. The world of Zoom.
Yeah.
Well, with that, why don't we wrap up, and we will plan to do some other things like this. And let's, for everyone, I hope this has been enjoyable and informative. And then maybe as we come together again on these types of things, we can bring friends, other folks that you think would be very interested, and continue to work on how we might expand the pool of people who are making these contacts, begin talking early. And as Brenda suggests, putting out some of that information on our sites and sharing by email and text and that sort of thing with friends and interested parties to continue to build a coalition. It's we all know it's a tough economy, but we'll have to pull together, and hopefully out of this we will walk away with stronger relationships and friendships. All right, with that, let's say thank you, Josh. Thanks everybody for joining. And Celia, thank you for pulling things together technically for us. I appreciate everything and all your help today. All right, hey, thank you everyone. You all have a good evening.